Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road. You know, Romans 10:17 says that faith comes from hearing. And today we have the unspeakable privilege to hear the story of Ken and Nora Stewart, one that begins as a love story with each other, but turns into a love story for those in need of hearing. Their incredible journey as the owners of HearCare Audiology and HearCare Connection is incredible. You will not want to miss this. Ken and Nora, thank you so much for being with us today. You have an amazing story with your business and your nonprofit and how you use it to advance the kingdom of Christ. But I want to start with the love story, talking about growing up and when you met for the first time.
It was the last day of my freshman year in high school, and a girlfriend said, "Hey, I just met a new friend, and he has a pool in the backyard. And it's June, it's hot." And she goes, "Do you want to go swimming?" And Ken happened to be the next door neighbor of the person that we went swimming at.
Oh.
And so he came over.
Weird 16-year-old boys have a way of figuring out their 16-year-old girls
next
in
door?
a pool nearby. It's like the spidey senses go off. You just...
So did you just come over with just your bathing suit on and you just jump in? Or how did you,
Basically.
what was your move?
It basically got into a wicked game of keep away with something, a football or something, and I just felt the need to have to guard her. I didn't want her to get the ball, so I had to cover that one pretty tightly. So
Could you tell there was interest right away?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Look at that thing. He only guarded me, and I was thrilled that he only guarded me. So the weirdest thing is every day after, I asked my friend Erin, "Hey, can we go to Joe's pool and swim?" So for like 2 weeks, I kept going swimming at Joe's house, and I kept looking to see would I see Ken. Finally, he came back over, we swam, and he invited me to his house. So I go to his house.
Were his parents home?
Yes, his mom was
good.
his mom
Thank
was
you.
home. Yes, so
Good.
this is a good thing. So we go up and I see his doorbell, and there's plaid around his doorbell, and I said, "Oh, that's the Stewart plaid." And he looked at me and he goes, "Well, I know it's the Stewart plaid." He goes, "My last name's Stewart." Well, my last name was Stewart. That's how I knew it was the Stewart plaid. So
Did you figure out right away if you were related or not?
we did.
we did the homework. We wanted to make sure before this goes any further, we need to...
So the next question is, well, how do you spell your last name if it's Stewart? We spelled it the same way. And what's really, really weird, why I think, who God has his hand in everything, my mom said, I had known since I was little, my dad was the last boy in his family. And he said, when I'm the second daughter. So when I was born, my dad made it very clear out to everyone he really wanted a boy. And when I was born, I was a girl. The nurse looked at my mom when she handed me to her and said, "Don't worry, this girl's going to keep your last name."
Are you serious?
I am serious. It's the story. I had heard it ever since I was little that I was the one that was going to keep the last name, and then...
You're probably dying when you're ringing the doorbell.
So if you look at the two of us and you go, her, him, when, divine providence is a good thing. It's his plan. I just rolled with it.
That is awesome.
It is awesome.
So what happens?
So we went through college, and I had babysat for a woman in Toledo that was an audiologist. And so when it came time to go to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 18 years old, and she said, "Well, go into audiology." So I said, okay. So Ken, meanwhile, went into business. Then he switched to political science. And by our junior year, we knew we were going to get married. He said, maybe I should go into audiology, and then we can own a little mom and pop hearing aid store someday. And so he did.
Oh, wow. So you graduate, you get married, get married, and then what do you do to start the business?
Well, we were on our way out west, and all of a sudden we were married and unexpectedly found out we had Kayla, who I believe you know, our 19-year-old daughter now. And that changed things. So we said, golly, we're young, we're broke, we're going to get back closer to Toledo, our hometown. And worked in a role. She was a rep for a hearing aid manufacturer for a while, and I was working at an office there, and had some God's knocking that we needed to do our own business, and so we moved to Fort Wayne. In fact, it's kind of an interesting story. We had a really great mentor through SCORE, the acronym for Service Corps of Retired Executives, and I remember we went to the SCORE office. And he had said at the closing of our meeting, 95% of people that I see in this office, he's like, I tell them, here's the year's plan. They have ambitions to maybe open a mechanic shop. And he's like, well, have you managed a mechanic shop? Well, no, but I'm really good with a wrench. And he's like, well, have you worked in a mechanic shop? No, I'm really good with a wrench. And he's like, look, I'm not saying you can't do it, but you need to do these things. Well, in a 1-hour meeting after telling our story, he's like, I want you to find me some business plans, go out, and we're going to do this. And I remember the elevator down, we're like, oh my goodness, this is exciting, but there's going to be that time where he says, okay, now how much money you got? What do you got to start this thing? And I've got this, beat up Honda Accord out front and probably a couple $1,000s in a checking account, and it just never mattered. I mean, we in fact tried everything not to move to Fort Wayne because at the time we're thinking, this little country town, we had never been there before, we didn't know anything about it, and it just so happened, God's design, he introduced us to a mentor whose daughter, who still plays in the Philharmonic here, Michigan grad, so she lived in Ann Arbor, which we think Ann Arbor is a great town. She loved Fort Wayne, and so it really coerced us to say, okay, let's at least spend a weekend before we write this, this opportunity off. And we came to Fort Wayne, we looked at real estate and the town, and really fell in love with the place. And,
you can be anywhere in such a short time, and we have just about everything, really.
And we had a baby, so a great place to raise a family. So that was 15 years ago.
Wow. So how does it go to open the first HearCare audiology?
Actually, when we were checking out to see if we should start a practice here, our mentor from SCORE said, well, go and meet with a banker and meet with an attorney and meet with some people to see. You get the feel of the city and just start to talk business with them. So his daughter, who lived here, referred us to a couple of people. So we met with the banker, and super nice guy, and at the end he said, so where do you think you might, move? And we told him, and we said, well, where do you live? And he said, well, I live here now, but we're moving because our kids go to this really great Christian school and we want to get closer to it. And we said, well, what is it? And they told us Black Hawk Christian.
Oh, wow.
So then we met with our attorney. Great meeting at the end. He asked us where we were thinking of moving. We told him, and we said, well, where do you live? And he said, well, I live here now, but we're about to move because our kids go to this really great Christian school. And we said, really? Well, what school? And he said the same thing. And we just looked at each other going, this is almost impossible.
You got everybody telling you, we're moving by Black Hawk.
Yeah, and then we went to go look at the business that was for sale that we came for, and literally Black Hawk was in the backyard of it. So, literally by that we just went, okay, what is this? It can't be coincidence when there's that many things that happen. And then we closed on the business, so we moved, bought a business, and had a baby all within a week's time.
High stress level.
Yeah, and we were happy as could be, excited. I look back on it now and think, there's no way we could do that. Yeah. And then had the business ran our practice for about 8 years, and raising kids and doing it. And just after 8 years, we were both starting to feel a little burned out. And then I heard about an opportunity to go on an international mission to bring hearing aids to kids. And I just thought, I need this. I really need it. I just felt, so I signed Ken and I up, and then I told him, Ken, where are we going to go? Going on a mission trip with me. And this one was to Mexico. And we went, and literally, it started with the first child was a little girl. She was about 8 years old, and I was scared to death because I don't speak Spanish. And, we practice in a room that has computers, and we know what we're doing.
Como está usted? I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I knew hola. And so I'm putting the hearing aid on this little girl, and her mom is in front of her, and our translator is to my left. And all of a sudden, the translator, I look at her to say, help me, what's the mom saying? She said, the mom is saying she doesn't understand why she's here. Her daughter is deaf. She's always been deaf. She can't hear. And it literally, right at that moment, I was rolling the volume control up, and this little girl just beamed, looked at me because she heard the sound of the translator telling me, her voice, that she's not going to be able to hear. And the mom literally stopped talking and started crying. The translator was crying. I was crying. And it went like that almost all day. And at 2 o'clock, I literally took a break, got down on my knees, and I said, God, if you can use me to do this, I believe this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You know, I got a whole bunch of questions out of that. First one is, isn't it amazing that the first words the girl hears is she'll never be able to hear?
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's got a whole thing going on with it. And then this may sound silly, but how in the world did they find kids who couldn't hear and connect you? How'd that happen?
Well, everywhere we go, there's got to be people on the ground that help us out. And that one particular clinic, there was a clinic called Angel Notion. This physician from LA was vacationing down in Mexico and did some touring, and it just, again, wrecked her. And she came back, sold her medical practice, went down to Mexico and opened up an office in rural part of Mexico.
Oh, my.
And so the connections came through her.
Wow.
So, we were working with a different organization. We were just, participants, but it was working through Angel Notion Clinic. So people just do amazing things. And the people that are there doing the work, I mean, they're really the heroes. We show up and try to support and give effort and support. But gosh, some people that sells their business and just moves to a rural part, it's like, wow.
That's a big God thing, but
Yeah.
it is with you too. So you come home, what are your conversations like about how you want to do this? A lot.
We still had a practice to take care of and children to raise. So, but I promised myself when I would pray, I'm never going to forget that moment that I knew, and I said, please use me. Flash forward, and all of a sudden, a lot of our patients here, the economy hit. Yeah. And so we're having a lot of patients having a hard time getting fit with hearing aids here. And I thought, well, maybe this is the door opening to do the work that I feel like we're called to do. And we always made it clear that we will help anybody that comes into our practice. We'll find a way. But with the economy, we're like, if we find a way, we'll go out of business, and then we can't help anyone.
Right.
So actually, a very good friend of mine, I sat down and I was lamenting too about the situation. And he said, well, it's time to start a nonprofit. And I thought, oh, okay. And
wow.
There's whole other miracles. Honestly, I can't even count the miracles on my hands of the people put in front of us at the exact right time to help meet the need, to take the steps to move forward, to start the nonprofit.
Sounds like your whole life.
It really is.
Back to the doorbell, the pool. It's always happening.
It's really, I don't know, we pray and say, I just want it to be yours. But
so you start the nonprofit?
So we start the nonprofit. We start locally with the whole plan while we were doing it and filling out all the paperwork for it, that we're going to start this locally to help people in need here. And it's not going to be free. I think there's a lot more dignity when it's reduced fee, sliding scale, and our patients actually give service hours to pay for their hearing aids, because I believe so wholeheartedly that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. A lot of people don't know how to serve, so we help them, and then they start serving. So our patients are not only connecting back to life through their hearing, they're connecting back to life through service.
That's a critical component.
Yeah, and I love it. And the patients end up that sometimes, they're scared of it because they don't know how.
Right.
It's not that once they start, they end up loving it. And we have patients that have won service awards now.
Really?
Yes.
So you must be really good at training.
Yeah, no, it's the people around us, because honestly, with the nonprofit, it is a community service. And so we have an executive director that's amazing at working with the patients, and a clinic director and an audiologist over there.
You're raising enough money to fund those 3 positions? And more, probably?
Yeah, just between local grants and between some fundraisers that we've had.
In fact, Nora said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take all of our advertising budget. We're not going to advertise anymore, and we're going to seed a not-for-profit. And the business owner in me is like, okay, we're not going to market anymore, and we're going to have people that have very little resources into our office, and we're going to try to provide on our own backs hearing care. And I'm like, are you crazy? And a lot of our advisors was like, you're going to drive your for-profit business right into the ground. And it was a tough market anyway, tough environment. And I give her a lot of credit. She was really the spearhead. I was the doubting Tom. I'm like, I know we're being called, we both feel led to do this, but what? Are we really going to do this? And then to flash forward 5 years later, the community really rallied around. And today we get way more thank yous than we deserve because it's the community that's rallied around. They're giving us the money, and the people that now are employed by our not-for-profit.
Well, when was your first missions trip on your own?
That was 4 years ago. We were in Bethlehem, and we collected used hearing aids from our patients. We still call for used hearing aids because what could be in a drawer, because they had gotten new technology or their loved one passed away, we can recondition and change lives with. When we go over, there's something so powerful about seeing somebody hear for the first time, and I'm like, it's beautiful. I'm like, well, this is beautiful. So if we could get a camera there and show other people, we're still a brand new nonprofit, and if we could get people to see the magnitude of what it's like, of what we're doing, maybe we could raise more funds, certainly raise more awareness. And I thought, who better, because we knew Curtis, than Curtis to do this. So I met with him at dinner.
He's got a gazillion Facebook followers.
Yeah.
If he asks what tie he should wear, he'll get like 2,000 likes.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So I met with him and I pitched the idea, and he said, Nora, I would love to do that, but I think you're absolutely crazy.
I could just say that, but you're absolutely crazy.
And he goes, but if you want to meet with the station and say that, tell them the idea, go ahead. So I did, and that was one of the best business meetings I've ever been into. When I met with the station leader and I told him the idea, he literally, during lunch, threw his hands up 3 times going, oh my goodness, this is a great idea. Would love to do it. And I thought, this is really happening.
God's vision has been followed by his provision in everything that you do in your lives, it sounds like.
It's just, it's amazing.
Well, your trip there and how it was covered on the local ABC affiliate through Curtis was absolutely incredible. And in social media, Curtis is reading the Bible on the air. You got to tie in all the historical nature of it. And then he's getting to experience what you experienced in Mexico for the first time, and that blows him away.
Yeah.
And that was Easter week too. So we didn't even think about that at the time, but just that coordination, and it was awesome.
And how many people did you take with you on that trip?
I'm thinking back. I think there was about 13 of us on that
Wow,
trip.
what an undertaking.
Yeah.
I mean, 3's an undertaking.
I know.
13?
Sometimes I look back at some of it and think, I would never do that again. That was really hard work.
So you get all this.
I'm so grateful.
Oh, it's just
that we
incredible.
did.
So you get all this coverage, and it enhances your nonprofit. I would assume you're now learning that it enhances the business because people see you're very holistic in your approach. When do you ask Curtis to go on another one? Did you do it on that trip or on the way back?
Oh, yeah. Well, Curtis was all in at that point, and he said, where are we going next? I mean, he was as much in the planning of saying, this is a good thing. We need to get right back.
And then was Zambia next?
Yes, so we got back, and I met with a local pastor here that I had met with a few times that was helping to guide me through some of this. And he said, and he just assumed we were going on a next trip. I mean, so he said, I have another woman that is an amazing woman, and I've always prayed for years, how do I help her? How can we maybe partner with her and help her? It's Princess Zulu from Zambia, and she lives in Chicago part-time and in Zambia the other time.
Curtis has talked about her on this show. What an amazing story.
An amazing woman. In fact, I could have her here. She should be on Restoration Road. She's such an inspiration to me, a woman that has beat every odds and fully relies on God. And so he set up the meeting. We drove to Chicago. I met with her. We discussed how the two nonprofits could work together, because hers in Zambia is all about building healthcare clinics and schools, so education and health. And we kind of decided, we are a little bit of what we're doing is bridging that gap, because we're healthcare and we need your facilities to fit the hearing aids, but then the children we're going to be fitting, it helps them to function in school. Without them, they can't be in school.
So you're not only helping hearing, you're helping quality of life and education and change the trajectory of their entire lives. Yeah,
I think so. And we've been back to Africa, and we're just so lucky to be able to see some of the stories and how they're progressing. In fact, the first time in Africa we went, 3 different parents came back on our second clinic day whose children were fit the first day, and said right after their children got fit, they walked over and re-enrolled them in school. Goodness. So it's just,
and combine that with the fact that Curtis learns how to walk a lion or something, and then sees all these animals in the wild. Oh my!
Well, that was the amazing thing to me, is when you fly into Africa, at least into Zambia, there's no roads. I mean, so we're coming down in the airplane, and I'm like, there's literally no streets, no roads, nothing. And I'm like, we're going to show up at this little hut clinic, and they're going to be like, the folks there are going to be like, hearing devices. I mean, you give me some medicine, give me some water, give me some food. I'm like, we're going to show up with a group of people that we're helping to lead. And I'm like, we have no idea what this is going to look like. And we open in fact, our signs for the clinic were literally stapled onto trees in the bush. I mean, that's how
people walk like hours, right? Word gets out.
You have to work with the government and the health ministry, and then in Africa, there's different tribes. You have to get the head of the tribe's approval to disseminate the information.
My.
But at the end of the day, it was paper stapled or taped or something to trees as we passed by. And I'm thinking,
who needs the internet?
We flew 22 hours in an airplane, and we're going to show up, and we get there, and a line, as far as you can see. And when we broke down every day for 6 or 7 days, we broke down when the sun went down because there was no lights, and there was still a line as far as you could see. And it's
wow,
the need's immense. And
were you able to meet everybody's need who came?
No.
You had to turn something away?
Everywhere we go is a little bit different. Like in Africa, malaria is a big issue, obviously, and the cheapest way to treat malaria is quinine. And so kids get dosed with quinine. It's very damaging to your auditory nerve. So you get a lot of severe hearing loss. And usually those are the kids that we can help.
Wow.
A lot of it, they don't have antibiotics. So, I mean, literally you'll see kids with active drainage just coming out of their heads. And, if that doesn't get taken care of, it'll kill them. They'll get, encephalitis or meningitis. And I had an ear, nose, and throat buddy of mine said that before antibiotics were out, more children were killed by ear infections in the head and neck area than any other issue, virus, epidemic in the history of man. So these little kids, and you go to them and you go, well, it's a medical issue. We need we need surgery or antibiotics, and you need to go to the clinic. And they look at you like, the clinic? I mean, there is a clinic in the main town of Lusaka, an hour and a half away, and that might as well be Pluto. It's not even an option. So.
And very little medicine. So for our next trip back, we would love to work with some pharmacies, get a couple of medical doctors with us, and we can treat the infections while we're treating, the longer-term hearing loss. One of my favorite stories from all of our trips happened in Zambia, and it was at the end of the night because we're trying to serve the children first, and then the adults are waiting patiently, literally walking how many kilometers and waiting all day in the sun. And it's dark, and we should have been packed up, but we're trying to get to all these people. And there was a senior man, and he came, and Ken was the one that fit him, and I was there at the time, and he put the hearing aid on him, and he just started crying and smiling, and he was so happy. And he gets up to go, and he starts to take the hearing aid out to give it back to us. And it gives me chills now, thinking he thought, he waited all day for the opportunity, and he thought he got 5 minutes of hearing.
Oh, my goodness.
And he couldn't believe we got the translator over, and we said, no, you can take it. And he couldn't believe it. So we all have the same shirts on. He stopped at every single team member to ask, am I really allowed to take this?
Oh, my
goodness. And then finally, the last memory is him getting on his bike and pedaling away in the dark.
He had to be so happy.
It's addictive. It keeps us coming back.
It's just like the first time in Mexico with the little girl. You went back on a trip with Kruse, and you went to Haiti?
Yes.
And how did that all unfold and work out for you?
I'm wonderful. So there is another hearing nonprofit that's attached to a manufacturer that a very, very passionate Christian woman is taking over Haiti, basically, and building this hearing clinic and a deaf school there. So we partnered with her to bring extra support. And I think, like Ken said, some of the people you meet on the ground and the opportunities to meet people that are there, donating their whole lives to helping people, it rocks your world. It's very humbling to see the work. So, it was amazing. We were able to help. That one, I think it was almost all children with a couple of adults. Haitians
are very celebratory people. So one of my colleagues, we're there in 100-degree heat, just under a canopy, roasted, and you're working really hard all day long with water breaks, probably not even food breaks. And so one of our colleagues from Pennsylvania just started playing some music just to kind of make time pass a little quicker and enjoy the work a little easier. And sitting next to this woman, and all of a sudden I turn her hearing devices on, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there, and she starts doing this, and she hears nothing, until we turn the hearing aid on, and all of a sudden I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you convulsing there? And then I realized she was doing it to the beat of the music, and so that's the first. So yeah, that turned into a dance of many. We started getting up and celebrating that.
So now you do a missions trip about every 3 to 4 months?
Well, you're mentioning like Guatemala and Haiti and Africa, and we were in Jordan a few months ago, and Bethlehem, and there's so much need, and we want to do it all, but we can't do it all. We just can't afford to do it all. And the international stuff does not take away from our local mission, although anything with Fort Wayne is here locally with HearCare Connection. So the international stuff is on us. And so we started an organization trying to find like-minded colleagues of ours, audiologists around the country, to make these sustainable. So a good friend of mine works at Do It Best Corp, which is a cooperative, and he's been on us for years to say, when are you going to start a cooperative? There's some similarities between kind of the ma and pa hardware store owner and ma and pa hearing aid store owner.
Yeah.
And so we've started a cooperative similarly in their model. So that's been a really big benefit to us. So now we don't need to have it on our back. So it's really helped to multiply our efforts. Now we've got people that, we opened up our invitation list for Guatemala, and it was booked within an hour, I think, of 30 some odd people,
well,
20 some odd people.
Go. I mean, now we need to limit the number because we can only have so many people go. Mm-hmm. So then who knows where that's going to take us? Maybe once a month to do this. I mean, my heart's desire, I would be just fine with going once a month and leading other people and helping them get involved.
Wow.
It's amazing how God works, because we started out, we have an office on State Street, and we have 2 dormers upstairs, and we started seeing patients in our upstairs floor of our little State Street office, and now we have a cooperative nationwide that God is pooling resources from all over the country, and people resources too, and it's taken off, and it's amazing. It's like God works. I mean, somebody said if your goal is offensive or small to you, it's probably very much offensive to God, and so this little small thing has just sprouted into more than what we could have ever imagined.
The Old Testament talks about small beginnings, and Jesus talked about that too, how the kingdom of God starts small, but then it just multiplies. And it's so cool how God has prompted you along the way, and his vision has been followed by his provision, and now you're multiplying it internationally throughout the world. Ken and Nora, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Our pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank you.